After 21 years, the mats are quiet. This wasn't just a gym. For hundreds of us, it was a sanctuary. And now, it's gone forever. The garage doors have slammed shut on one of jiu-jitsu's most iconic, beloved, and authentic training grounds. This is the story of Combat Base, a small garage in Redondo Beach, California that became a global landmark. It's the story of a pioneer who built a haven, not a business. And it's the story of why it had to end. A tale of loyalty, community, and the economic realities changing the face of martial arts. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what was built. And to understand Combat Base, you have to understand its founder, Chris Haueter. In the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, history matters. Lineage is everything, and Haueter's place in that history is permanent. He's one of the Dirty Dozen, the first 12 non-Brazilians to ever receive a black belt in the art. He started his journey way back in 1988, earning that coveted rank in 1996 when Jiu-Jitsu in America was still a raw underground scene. Haueter wasn't just a practitioner, he was a philosopher of the art, known for his no-nonsense approach and his view of jiu-jitsu as a tool for self-improvement, not just a sport. He wasn't interested in the growing commercialism of martial arts, the giant dojos with rows of treadmills and smoothie bars. He was interested in the essence of it. And in 2005, he found that essence in the humblest of places, a one-car garage at his family's home on Avenue D in Redondo Beach. He threw down some mats and Combat Base was born. It wasn't a business plan, it was just a space to train with friends. It was pure. By 2007, at his wife Melissa's suggestion, the operation moved into the property's bigger 3-car garage. This is the Combat Base that became legendary. It was a space just big enough for maybe 6 pairs of grapplers to train at once, a tight fit that created a unique kind of connection. Longtime member Eddie Cairns, who started there in 2008, described it perfectly. We usually cram in pretty tight in the garage. It's a backyard DIY martial arts space. Super unconventional, which is kind of why it's so iconic. This wasn't a gym you could just join. Combat Base operated on a different currency, passion and respect. It was an invite-only hub built around 3 weekly open mats. The core crew was about 20 regulars, mostly seasoned black belts. This was a place for the dedicated, for those who wanted to test themselves against the best, free from the contracts and belt chasing of a commercial gym. The model was simple: show up, train hard, share what you know, and respect the house. There were no frills. The walls were covered with years of memorabilia, gis hung from the rafters, and the air was thick with the history of countless hours of sweat and effort. It was a time capsule of jiu-jitsu culture. Because of that raw authenticity, the garage on Avenue D became an unlikely pilgrimage site for practitioners from all over the world. If you were serious about jiu-jitsu and you were in Southern California, you tried to get an invitation. The cramped space hosted seminars by legends like Clark Gracie, Jeff Glover, all drawn by the non-commercial vibe. It was a place where a local blue belt could suddenly find themselves rolling with a world-renowned black belt who had flown thousands of miles just to be there. This was the golden era, a time when a simple garage became more than just a place to train. It became what so many people search for but rarely find: a third place. Not home, not work, but a space where they could build their identities, forge unbreakable bonds, and find a real sense of belonging. It was, in every sense of the word, a sanctuary. But sanctuaries built in the heart of desirable coastal cities are fragile. The world changes around them. And for Combat Base, the writing had been on the wall for years, spelled out in real estate listings and gentrification. Chris Haueter himself saw it coming. He talked about it on his podcast, reflecting on his father's foresight decades ago. "We are here in Redondo Beach," he explained. My father, when he purchased his first home in Manhattan Beach for like $56,000, knew that eventually they are going to run out of beach land and that beach land is valuable. The neighborhood around the garage began to transform. Haueter remembered a time when the area was home to chop shops and motorcycle gangs, but over 2 decades, that gritty reality was paved over. As he put it, "I have watched this neighborhood gentrify." Old houses were torn down and replaced with modern homes selling for over $3 million. The very forces making the land valuable were erasing the culture that made it special. He knew the clock was ticking. Eventually, I knew we would either, if we could hold on to this thing, we would have a good nest egg, or we would be gentrified out. The catalyst for the end wasn't a market crash or a business failure, but a deep personal loss. In October 2025, Chris's mother, Judith Haueter, who owned the home, passed away. With her passing, the property had to be sold. The inevitable had finally arrived. For the community, the first question was obvious. Why not just move? Why not open a new commercial combat base? This is where the story shifts from culture to cold, hard math. The very thing that made Combat Base special, its small, intimate, non-commercial model, was exactly what made relocating impossible. On their podcast, Chris and his wife, Melissa, who handles the business side, broke down the brutal financial reality. Melissa laid out the numbers. First, rent for a new commercial space would be around $6,000 a month. But to run a full-time school, Chris would have to give up his other income, like his seminar circuit. That meant losing another $4,000 or $5,000 a month. So now we are actually in the hole like $11,000 instead of just $6,000 a month, Melissa explained. The conclusion was inescapable. We cannot afford to do that because we cannot even afford to keep this space. Because if we could afford to go in the hole $5,000 a month, we would be able to afford to keep this space. The math didn't lie. To make a commercial gym work, they'd have to become everything they weren't. They'd need a 200-student model, kids' classes, and long-term contracts. The exact things Combat Base stood against. It would mean sacrificing the soul of the place just to save its body. For Chris, it was a matter of principle. His philosophy was captured in a single, powerful statement. I feel like I do not have the desire to pay to go to work. I get paid to work, and I will not pay to go to work. It wasn't bitterness. It was the clear-eyed honesty of a man who built his life on authenticity. He wasn't going to go into debt to recreate a watered-down version of the magic he'd captured in his garage. The spirit of Combat Base couldn't be bought or leased, and so the date was set. January 18th, 2026 would be the final open mat. The news was crushing. The final session was heavy, packed not just with bodies, but with 2 decades of history. It was a celebration and a wake all at once. Friends who had become family exchanged long hugs. There were last rolls between partners who had spent years battling on those mats. The air filled with the familiar sounds of jiu-jitsu, but this time each sound felt like a final note in a long, beautiful song. It was the sound of a sanctuary in its final moments. A garage is just a garage, but what was built inside those walls on Avenue D was something permanent. The real legacy of Combat Base isn't in the wood and concrete, it's in the lives it changed. It was never just about jiu-jitsu. It was about what jiu-jitsu could do for a person in the right environment. There's no better example than Wesley Nash. Nash grew up just 2 houses down. As a teen, he was headed for trouble. At 15, he was expelled from high school and, in his own words, was in a lot of trouble. That's when he discovered the garage. He started training, pouring all his energy onto the mats. The discipline he learned at Combat Base became his anchor. He trained relentlessly while working to get back into school. The garage didn't just teach him to fight, it taught him how to live. He graduated with his class, earned a third-degree black belt, and built an incredible career. Today, Wesley Nash is an LA County emergency responder and a licensed pilot. Looking back during that final open mat, the weight of what that place meant to him was clear. "This place means a lot to me," he said. "It got me out of a lot of trouble." His story isn't unique. It's the perfect embodiment of the gym's true purpose. Eddie Cairns echoed that feeling, speaking about the impact Chris and Melissa had. "A lot of people were kind of saved by Melissa and Chris's hospitality," he reflected. He used the word saved for a reason. For many, the garage was a lifeline. It offered stability, purpose, and a community that extended far beyond the mat. That is the core of Combat Base's legacy. It was never about creating world champions. It was about making people better. It represented something rare in the commercialized world of martial arts, a place built on authentic relationships, with the belief that jiu-jitsu's real value isn't how it transforms lives, not how many memberships it sells. The closure on January 18th was the end of the physical space, but not the end of Combat Base. Chris Haueter sees it as a transformation. "I know that all things come to an end," he said. "Through all that stuff comes new growth. I see this as an opportunity rather than a liability." And that new growth is already happening. The Combat Base Club continues online. Chris keeps traveling and teaching, and in a perfect testament to the garage's spirit, one of its longtime members, Kyle Thompson, is already getting ready to open a new open mat space in a former barbershop nearby, making sure the local community has a place to roll together. A sanctuary isn't defined by its walls. It's defined by the spirit it fosters. For 21 years, a humble garage in Redondo Beach was one of the most important sanctuaries in martial arts. Now, it's a memory, but its legacy lives on in the hundreds of people it shaped, the lives it saved, and the idea that the greatest things are built for passion, not for profit. The story of Combat Base will feel familiar to anyone who's ever found a home in a gym, a dojo, or any community that became more than just a place. It's a reminder that these spaces are precious and often temporary. What was your Combat Base? What was that special place that changed your life? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's celebrate these sanctuaries, past and present. The era of the garage on Avenue D is over, but the lessons learned and the friendships forged on those mats are permanent. The community is the true Combat Base, and that is something that can never be closed.